Okay, well, I don't have my... Yes. Good morning, and welcome to the August 13th, 2019 Board of Commissioners hearing, or meeting. And on my left, we have Commissioner Deb Shore and Commissioner Sean Flowerday, and Vice Chair Commissioner Sean Flowerday, better say that too. And we have on my right Commissioner Christina Yoakum and Commissioner Rick Fest. I am Commissioner Roma Amundson, Chair of the Board, and I would ask you to stay with me at the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and thank you so much. And Mr. Clerk, will you begin the agenda?
A copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is located on the wall at the rear of the hearing room. Additionally, a copy of all written material to be discussed at today's open meeting is available from the county clerk's staff at the front of the hearing room. The material can also be viewed on the county's website at lancaster.ne.gov. Agenda item 1 are minutes. Approve the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held on Tuesday, August 6, 2019.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Are there any corrections? Please call the roll.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yoakum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 2 are claims. Approval of all claims processed through August 13, 2019.
I move approval.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve all the claims. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yoakum,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 3 are consent items. These are routine business items that are expected to be adopted without dissent. Any individual item may be removed for special discussion and consideration by a commissioner or by any member of the public without prior notice. Unless there's an exception, these items will be approved as one with a single vote of the Board of Commissioners. These items are approval of amendments to the following county contracts. C-18-729 with McKesson Medical Surgical Government Solutions, LLC, using the Sourcewell contract 061417 MML for health and safety, medical, surgical, and first aid related equipment, supplies, accessories, and services. C-16-0078 with Language Line Services, Inc., using state of Nebraska contract number 488604 for language interpretation services, phone and video. C-18-252 with WellPath for medical care services for the Youth Services Center. Contract with Paragon Services, Inc. to provide annual services, print and mail real estate tax statements. The term of the contract is 4 years from the date of execution with the option to renew for one additional 4-year term. The cost of county is not to exceed $173,760 for the contract term. Contract with MMC Contractors to provide rooftop HVAC unit replacement, county extension. Change order number 3 to county contract C-18-405 with M.E. Collins Contracting Company for erosion checks, type water in lieu of erosion checks, type 3 height and sold by Nebraska Hydro Seeding, Inc. at Box Culvert N19, erosion control 1D in place of seeding type A, and mulch at CBC B147. Right-of-way contracts with the following: Michael A. and Mark D. Levitt, 9500 Adams Street, in the amount of $1,067.50. Ag Invest LLC, South 82nd Street, between Roca Road and Saltillo Road, in the amount of $7,555. Nebraska Public Power District, Southwest 50th Street and West Princeton Road, in an amount of $1,315. Received and placed on file the following reports for July 2019. Assessor Register of Deeds and Records and Information Management.
Move approval of the consent items.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent items. Please call the roll.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Number 4 is old business. Resolution in the matter of adopting minimum road standards for roads in unincorporated areas pursuant to Nebraska Revised Statute 39-1501, bracket 5.
Pam Dingman, Lancaster County Engineer. We're bringing this forward to correct a number of resolutions over a number of years and some inconsistencies in the document. Overall, we know that this is not a final document and we'll need to continue to look at this process. And I've told you that several other times that I think we do need to create a task force to look at the acreage development in the county in general. So with that, I bring forward this, these new standards.
Okay. Any questions? All right.
Just for the record, how many acreage developments will be affected by this change in standards?
There's actually 2 that I believe will be affected. However, 1 is in the process of being replatted.
No further questions. I would entertain a motion for approval.
I move approval. I would second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Items 4B and 4C will hold until after the public hearing. Number 5 is new business. 5A is a special designated license application from Seven Diamonds LLC for an event at the Monier Farms, 205 Waverly Road, Raymond, Nebraska, on September 1st, 2019.
Any discussion?
Do we have anyone here?
Is there anyone here to speak on that? What concerns do we have?
I don't
Do
believe,
we want to delay this until we have a person speaking? Okay.
Control needs it by next week.
Control needs it by next week. Okay, the sheriff has no disapproval on it. Okay,
Okay, if there's no one here to testify, I was just closing the public hearing, and then you can move on to discussion on the item and any conditions or anything of that sort.
okay, well, there was no hearing on this particular one. Mhm.
The public hearing is listed down at number 6, but because it's old business, it's showing up both places.
Oh, I see, okay.
It's the first time I've seen that.
Yeah, let's,
Yeah.
oh, wait.
no, we're on 5A.
We're in A.
5A,
5A.
yes.
There's no,
Yeah, there's no public hearing on that. No,
we skipped.
we skipped that, that's going to be at the very end.
I will move approval of this.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the SDL from Seven Diamonds LLC. Any discussion?
I guess just the concern is, it's a new entity.
It's a new
We
entity.
haven't heard from them. The Moniker Farms isn't an event, a venue that we're familiar with, so I guess that was my concern, that,
And I agree with you, this is the first time, that's why I was wondering if there was someone to speak on this.
oh. Oh, they were? Okay,
At Monier Farm?
Not at the.
Okay, okay,
but we have had applications from him before. Okay, well, that's good information to know.
okay,
And it has been through the process, through the sheriff's
right.
department.
And I
so-
did, yeah, it has been through, the sheriff had no
Oh,
difficulty with that.
Okay. He
Oh.
came under the Talon Room. Okay, this is sounding familiar now. Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0. B is an amusement license renewal application from Jan and Daryl Hauser for an event at Pine Creek Farms at 11505 North 14th Street, Raymond, Nebraska, on September 21st, 2019.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't think I have any changes at all.
Mhm.
I think I have all the paperwork. Do you have questions for me?
Are there any questions?
Is this an event you've had previously, Lynn? Could you give us a little
I
background?
have had this event previously. This would be the third one of this event. I've had several other events on my property, so I think this is the 8th time I've spoken in front of you. My land hasn't changed, nothing has changed. We no parking on North 14th Street. We do have signs that state that. We do have ample parking. The only service that we're going to do to the community, so you're aware of this, is that the Raymond Fire Department has asked us, they are very short on volunteers, and so we have a big space. If you look at the map on there, they've asked that they bring their fire truck there and set up, and they're going to have firemen walking throughout our booths and things because they need recruits very badly. And so we have accepted them as a free booth to come, etc. Shane has been in contact with me, and they came out and did a great assessment for us. In case there was an accident there, we have a U-shaped driveway. You just go in and out. Nobody ever parks on that part on the road or anything. And so parking is very ample on that 40 acres.
Okay, I think that was a very good thing that you're doing for Raymond.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah, you know, it's just being a good neighbor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a great idea. We should be sharing that with all of our other rural
Right.
fire departments.
I think that's a great idea, yeah. Recruitment, I think, is really a tough thing.
I would move approval of this application.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, and you know you all could attend.
thank you, yeah.
5C is a contract with Trade B Environmental Services LLC to provide annual services, hazardous waste services. The term of the contract is September 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020, with an option to renew for 3 additional one-year terms. The cost of the county is not to exceed $5,000.
Good morning,
Good
Board
morning.
of Commissioners. How are you doing? I'm Scott Holmes. I manage the Environmental Health Division with the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department. This is a contract you don't often see before you because it's a very small amount for the county, but it's a very large amount for the city. This is a contract which, as the Health Department, we work with our hazardous waste at the Lincoln Hazardous Waste Center, as well as the mobile collections, as well as some of the small business collections that we do. And when we're developing that contract, we have always included the county as an option so that if the county agencies have waste, they have a contractor and they have a set price and they know that they can get rid of their waste. And it is used typically quarterly by some county agency, commonly corrections or shops or something like that for solvents and things like that. So that's what it is. 189-page contract on your agenda, so yeah. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions?
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, small amounts to the county and large amounts to the city is one of our favorite type of contracts.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would move approval.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the contract. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0. D is a contract with NMC Inc. for annual supply Caterpillar filters. The contract is for 1 year with the option to renew for 3 additional one-year terms. The cost of the county is not to exceed $23,000.
Move approval.
I'll second.
have a motion and a second to approve the contract. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes,
Motion carries 5-0. E is a contract for annual supply ice melt. The contracts are for 1 year with the option to renew for 3 additional one-year terms with the following: Nebraska Landscape Solutions, Inc., Egan Supply, and Helena Chemical Company.
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve these contracts. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. F is a recommendation from the purchasing agent and Lancaster County Engineering to award a contract to Sapp Brothers, Inc. for annual supply of lubricants. The estimated amount is $70,000.
Move approval?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Next is number 6, public hearings. Change of zone number 19018, AG Agricultural to AG Agricultural, a historic landmark overlay on approximately 17 acres on property generally located at 17185 Bluff Road in Lancaster County, Nebraska.
Okay, this is a hearing that continues from July 31st. We will have, there's actually 2 hearings in this particular category, number 6. We will deal with the first one, the change of zone, number 19018. And as I mentioned, on July 31st, the commissioners will hear only new information. So if there are any proponents, opponents, or in a neutral position who have new information, we will ask you to come forward. Any proponents with new information?
If you'd want to sign in, please.
Yes.
And I need to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Okay. Hi, my name is Erica Thompson, and I am a resident at 15500 Bluff Road. I'm one of 3 acreages on the way out to the location. And I was just wanting to come and kind of lend my support for the idea of having an event barn or an event location out on Bluff Road. I just, as a lifelong resident, I'm 4th generation on the family farm there, and as you know, everyone knows, the family farm is changing and evolving, and things do have to, you know, improve and adapt and change. And I really feel like using the land out there for something other than just living space and farmland is not a negative. I think it's, you know, something that the community of Waverly could really benefit from. I think it's something that will be very well run. I'm also a photographer. I've been to hundreds of weddings over the years. I know exactly what these kind of events can be and cannot be. You know, I've seen the plans for the barn. It's a very upscale, very nice establishment. It's not going to be, you know, a party barn where, you know, there's loud and raucous events. Of course, there will be music. Of course, there will be some noise, but it will be a very well-run establishment, and I think it can't do anything but benefit the community of Waverly. I don't see how it could affect us as residents on the way out there any more than, say, Camp Creek Threshers does. That's, you know, 3 days of heavy traffic. Having had the pavement put in out through that area made a much bigger impact for us. I mean, number one, the Camp Creek event was a dust bowl until that happened. Once the pavement has gone in, you know, it's been a much nicer environment. On the other hand, the pavement has also brought a lot of changes for us in terms of traffic and, you know, the use of that road. So I can't see how having an event, you know, once a week or something like that in the evenings at a well-run establishment would affect our lives in any way. So I think it can only benefit the community. I think it'll be a great idea. So, any questions?
Okay, Rick?
Miss
Thompson.
Thompson, you do live on Bluff Road,
Yes.
you said, and you would live then to the west towards Waverly or to the east?
To the west. So I'm a half mile east of 148th Street on a historical family farm there.
Yeah, I think my directional system worked there. So, yeah, you're a couple of miles away from the proposed.
Less than a mile, I believe.
Less than a mile,
Yeah.
you said. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Well, thank you for sharing your perspective. I appreciate that.
Any other questions?
That's all I have.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other proponents? If not, let's go to any opponents with new information.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Mary Johnson. I live at 17705 Bluff Road, which is 1/2 mile east of the proposed, quote, event center. And right now, I'm just discussing this historic overlay. We'll have testimony later as far as the event center. I have mentioned in the past that it's simply a means, the historic overlay is an avenue to get more events out there than what they currently are allowed. Carol Hartwig admitted this at the last commissioners meeting. She stated they went the route of the overlay to get more events into place. Let's look at what has been done to this location. And I'm going to show some pictures here. And this was taken directly off the Facebook page that Midwest Custom Home Designs has. The kitchen has been altered tremendously. It's been changed significantly from what a 1920s kitchen is. The top was what they started with, the bottom is what they have. Windows have been changed, several other things have been changed. But we completed the entire house remodel, including adding a master suite and turning the attic into a second family room. We also remodeled a big barn, and it is now ready for events. So that has been altered from 1920 as historic designation. That's why I'm addressing this at this point. Secondly, on that same page, this is what the aspiration is eventually. The top is what the currently house looks like, and this is public information. I didn't go and sneak around to get this. This is public information. This is what they have. This is what they aspire to do. Adding a garage and possibly changing the exterior look, removing the big bushes. My house is on the top, current state. Bottom's the dream. Okay, if we are changing this, if we are searching for a historic overlay, why are we making these huge changes? That's what I have an issue with, and that's what many of the other people in this room have an issue with that are opposing this historic overlay. Third, this is the barn. The barn that was going to be the barn for events initially, but then it couldn't meet code. They put concrete in. Not too many 1920s barns have concrete in them. You know, I lived in a Sears and Roebuck house most of my life growing up. I know what historical things are. I collect antiques. I like classic cars. I like to keep things the way that if it's historic and there's a designation associated with it, then we need to follow that designation and not go after an overlay to get a commercial property put into a place. I'm requesting you to not vote yes on the historic overlay. Make this a commercial event. This is a commercial, this is actually what it is, a commercial request for a wedding venue. And currently I searched wedding venues within 40 miles of Waverly, Nebraska. There's 1,837 of them listed. Do a search, you'll find it yourself. I have spoken with people who have these barn venues. They met with everyone within a 2-mile radius to see what their concerns were. They didn't wait until the Planning Commission sent out a letter to those individuals, and that was the first that they heard about it. I'm saying that it was gone about the wrong way, and this needs to be corrected. It's a commercial event. It's going to be a commercial function. Do not allow the historic overlay on this. I ask that you deny it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
other
questions?
Any questions? Okay, any other opponent? Anyone in a neutral status?
Oh, they've got
Oh,
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Althouse is
Okay.
coming up.
And you are an opponent, right? Monet, I have a pencil.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good morning. I'm Clarence Aldhouse Jr., and I would speak first about this overlay permit. And I think that the county needs to look at the system that they have on this. I've lived in this community now for over 70 years. I'm acquainted with everybody around there. I'm acquainted with every farm that's there. My son owns property bordering on this property. We didn't know what was going to take place here until I noticed in the fine print in the journal that there was a hearing, and it was dealing with property on 17185 Bluff Road. And it was called the Cooley Dodge Homestead. This waked me up because Cooleys were my grandparents. They simply lived on a farm in this area, just like the Olsons, like the Johnsons, like the Axbergs, all the others. It was just simply home to them. And I object to being called a historical landmark. I see nothing that suggests anything spectacular about this, any different than any of the rest of the neighborhood. And I don't think that that's proper. I think that is sort of skirting the rules that the county has. And the other lady that spoke here reminded you that this is in a rural area. The fire and all the protection is volunteers put on. If there is problems in this area, they can't just jump, you know. They have to leave their job, and I respect all those people that can do that, but that puts a terrific burden on, and I think that this is a mistake to change this overlay simply to permit a commercial business on this property. If you have any questions, I can try to answer what you want to ask on this.
Any questions? Commissioner Vest?
Mr. Althouse, just one of the concerns I've heard you express is that your grandparents, as I've gathered information, your grandparents lived there and they helped develop a lot of the buildings that kind of are there still today.
Certainly, some of them were there before they came there, and some have been put on afterwards. I was very familiar with all the buildings on the place, having grown up there as a child, gone there to play many, many times, and substantially many changes have been made in the property. It's not a historical landmark. This wasn't handed down from one family to another. There was no relation between any of the people that have lived on this farm.
Right. I think the commission that studied this has different definitions they're using for historical than the family lineage. So my question to you, sir, is, and I really want to honor your opinion in this, is would it make any difference to you if there was a different name attached to it, if the Cooley name was removed, and we've heard several other families that were significant in this property, would that give comfort to you if the Cooley name was not a part of it?
Well, I guess it could make a difference of how I feel that I was connected individually, but I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the community there. And maybe the rest of the community doesn't get hit the way our family does, but everyone should know we have nothing to do with this thing. It's somebody made up a story that this should be a landmark and a historical site, which that's bogus, as far as I'm concerned. So
I'm hearing you say not so much. I mean, the name of it is less important to you than...
Well, that's what caught my eye when, out of the blue, I was, you might say, was attacked by somebody that wanted to change what we had lived in that community. And I would hope that this doesn't happen to everyone else around the county if this is going to be the rule, that anybody who wants to have a story with no proof or background, I think are getting into trouble.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments or questions?
I just have a question for Ed whenever it's appropriate.
For whom?
For Ed, whenever
Okay.
it's appropriate. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Marlon Johnson, 5218 North 202nd Street, Alvo, that eventually I'll be moving over to the same house with my wife on 17705 Bluff Road. My comment is the gray area that we heard at the County Planning Commission meeting, where I made the comment there's really nothing unique architecturally about these buildings with it. And in the rebuttal of that, Mr. Steve Henriksen said, well, it really isn't the buildings, it's the people that lived there. And then we come to the commissioners meeting that was here just a couple weeks ago, and we hear Ed Zimmer tell about how it's the buildings. Where does consistency come in here? I mean, what really is the story? And I personally think that you as commissioners are setting a precedent of how wide open this thing might be for the historic overlay. You know, essentially the way I begin to see this thing falling into place is that anybody that could prove that they have a 1920s home or something really early century like that, a couple of buildings, just opens the door for how many more things to come like this. So how do you judiciously say that this one or other ones could or couldn't be? I think you've got to have some real facts come through, and you know, most likely if there's some early pictures to verify what it was versus what it is today. That's how you need to base your determinations on these things. So I'd be available for questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Anyone else has an opponent? Okay.
Loma. The clerk's office has had several letters since the public hearing on July 30th. We received letters from Nancy Mocroft and David Paulson, 4 letters, Mildred Puchella, and 1 email signed by Nancy Mocroft, David Paulson, Millie Puchella, Peggy Brown, and Mary Alice Picorni Johnson.
Okay. Anybody in a neutral status? Okay, and you had a question of the staff.
I did, Ed. Just to refresh our memories from a couple weeks ago, there are
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Ed Zimmer, Planning Department.
just a brief explanation of the designation process as it moves through the Historic Preservation Commission. Just, I'm going to clarify that there's no limit on the number of historic designations that are available for Lancaster County. And then if you would address component 2 of the preservation guidelines regarding notice of work needing certificate, and kind of outline what changes can and can't be made under this designation. It's 4 questions in one.
Thank you. Remind me as I go along, if you would, please.
your zoning regulation that you adopted last year, I believe, pretty closely parallels the city chapter 2757 of the city zoning code. It refers to different categories in which you might identify landmarks, properties that have contributed to the broader history of Lancaster County, the state of Nebraska, or the nation. These also closely parallel the National Register of Historic Places guidelines that we get from the Park Service. This, though, is a local designation focusing on county history, and the category in which we discussed this, and then it was first reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission, as you wrote into your guidelines that you would first seek their advice, looked principally at the ensemble of buildings, the collection of buildings that make up the farmstead, and both buildings and landscape features that make up that part of the historic farm, not the whole acreage, or not the whole historic acreage of a much larger farm, but the working buildings and the surrounding landscape features. The Preservation Commission looks at that as they look at, and have looked at since the early 1980s, a wide variety of resources. We also rely on the comprehensive plan in Chapter 4 that talks about the characteristics, we call it the placemaking chapter, that those characteristics that make up this community and this county and city in which we live. And this application really addressed that group of buildings together, not the interiors, not that it represented all the features, and nothing in your regulations say that we only nominate the very best one in the county, but rather something that is representative of the development, the historic conditions that gave us the place we live in today. Preservation Commission recommended unanimously to the Planning Commission and to you that this met those characteristics. The names associated are the people that, as we researched it, were initially involved. This is, I think as you had implied, Mr. Best, that this is different than a heritage farmstead or the programs that identify a family that has occupied and developed the same land over a long period of time. We simply use the names that are the early names associated with a property. If this were called Bluff Road Farmstead, that would not change your process. That we simply look to those historic names. The application really uses those because we do look into how did this come about, what is the period represented by a place. So then it came through Preservation Commission, on to Planning Commission. Both of them looked at both this matter that you're having the hearing on now and the special permit because they are attached together. You last year made the changes to your regulations to give a more orderly process to this procedure, but you've had the special permit for historic places in your code back before me. So back in the at least early 80s, you've had a provision that you could extend a special permit. That's simply an existing part of your code. So that's what has brought you the landmark piece. What would be reviewed on future changes would be changes to the buildings, the landscape that has been identified, and explicitly any new buildings that would occur on the site and any major landscape changes that occur on the site. In the review by the Historic Preservation Commission, they saw the concepts for the special permit, and they understand and anticipate that they will be reviewing a building and landscape screening and some kind of parking area identified in the conceptual plans. So that all has to come forward to the Preservation Commission before building permits can be issued and before the requirements that you would build, if you approve this, that you would build into both the overlay and the special permit, those reviews would be required. So they would come back to the Preservation Commission for any of those future work that they're asking you permission to be allowed to do.
And that's a pretty long list. Exteriors, doors, frames, awnings, mechanical systems, signage, moving of structures, changing of electrical utility, overhead lighting, any poles, any pavement, any painting, removal of trees and shrubbery. So it's a pretty comprehensive list. And anytime they want to make those changes, it has to be approved by historic preservation.
Your regulations set in place a couple of tiers of review. Some of them can be administrative if they're minor and aren't affecting the historic characteristics. Any bigger change, including one that we might recommend approval of, goes to the Preservation Commission. So if we see a nice barn type event building that fits what they've described to you, that's still going to go to the Commission for their review of its fitness in the setting. This comes with this kind of request comes with accepting quite a bit of responsibility to keep up the property, maintain the characteristics, to earn, and really they have to argue the special permit on behalf of, allows them to do the job they want to do of maintaining the property.
Okay, any further questions? Commissioner Vest?
Yeah, just a couple, Mr. Zimmer, to help make sure I'm understanding this accurately. So the standards do not preclude modernizations of the kind we saw. You know, we saw some photographs this morning that the kitchen now is modern.
We typically don't designate interiors because there isn't a public view of those. We've had some rare cases, St. Francis Chapel on the old St. Elizabeth grounds, where the interior kind of is the feature, right, where it's identified, but that's exceptionally rare even among the thousands of properties that are in districts or individually designated within Lincoln. So it isn't typically the interior that we're looking at because there's not a public view or utilization of that. It's more the public right-of-way, what we can all enjoy in the character it adds to our community. But we also don't, in a designation, say you either meet the standards as you present it or you don't. We don't say you go back and restore something that has been changed in the past. You either have met the standard or not. That's what the advice you're getting up to the state, and the decision you'll finally make is whether it appears to meet the standards you've set into your ordinances.
Well, it makes sense to me. There are very few of us that want to live at a 1920s kitchen or bedroom or any of the rest.
I get the phone calls from people saying, I know I can't change my kitchen, or I know I can't change my bathroom. I'll say, well, I don't know that. Why do you think that? And we have a good talk. And we're all part of the history of our property as well. It's an ongoing, evolving process. Do we contribute? Do we recognize those things that make them special? And do we also add our own touch as we live in a property?
And again, then this process is open to anyone who believes they have some historical buildings. If they want to apply, they can.
And if they want to accept the regulations and oversight that would come with it. And then you also look at whether this fits the property and the location. We have a land use issue and a historic designation issue. That's why you have two steps to this process. Not all historic places seek a special permit. If someone does, you review both of them all through the process and you get the advice of the other bodies, then you make your decision.
And it appears in this case, you know, there's a dual purpose here, or maybe not a dual purpose, but a specific target that the landowners are striving for. A person could do this designation with no motive other than just they wanted to put it on the register somewhere to let people know.
Yeah. People will do that for their own pride in a property. They will do that to provide a continuing oversight of something they've invested their blood, sweat, and treasure in, and want that to continue under the recognition. Some people will do it because they want a future owner to know that it is an historic place and to only accept it if they're willing to accept the review that comes with it.
Which would actually have an impact on their resale because whoever's buying it from them is accepting the same responsibilities. You can't unapply, I guess.
You can change a zone as you have that zoning authority. This is a zoning category. The overlay is a zoning, but it doesn't change the underlying zoning, so it'd be rather different than changing these 17 acres, I believe it is, to a commercial category, which would allow anything in that category. This is a very specific ask. The buildings have to stay, the farmstead has to stay, the reviews do occur, and so you're being asked a much more limited question than if it were, what if we made this just a commercial site? That's a different, that would be a very different question.
And there is a process for making it a commercial site. Is that your area of expertise, or do we need to?
We have many others who are more gifted in those areas than I am.
I appreciate that. Just the last question I want to, and I appreciate your clarifying these things. You may have answered this, but I want to specifically ask, the standards for getting a property declared a historical site, it's not based on ownership by a family, it's based on representation of a different.
Let me expand that a little bit to be more clear. You have several characteristics by which a place might be regarded as historic, as the National Register does as well. It can be association with significant persons or events. Appomattox Courthouse would be significant for the end of the Civil War for an event. South Bottoms in Lincoln is significant for the broad event of immigration of Germans from Russia who had such an impact on our community. If it's significant for association with a person or event, you also have to have enough integrity of the physical place that you can recognize the story, that it still is a place that conveys that story. But it can also be solely for the buildings, because one of the major artifacts we make on our landscape is buildings. We live in them, we produce from them, we all the economic activity typically, we worship and learn in them. So buildings are a very important category, and something can be significant for the architecture alone, for representing a kind of economic production in our place over time, or for individuals. What we couldn't designate by your standards would be a place that a farmstead, the historic farmsteads that the Severance family has been on for 150 years, is special because of that family connection. If the buildings don't represent that story, this kind of designation doesn't work. If the buildings and the family story together, then that's a powerful additional story. But it can be any one of these categories if sufficiently documented and brought to you in the proper way.
All right.
Thank you for the opportunity to expand that.
And I do have a question too. And I'm going to use a very specific example because I'm going to be talking about the modernization of the exterior. I think that there was some comment made about that there were windows that were being changed and so forth on the house. Okay.
I'm not sure if those two images were the same building. That's not part of the application. Certainly the house has received modernizations. I don't know that those two images relate to one another. The top one is the remodeled house today. I'm not sure what the bottom image was representing.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, I just had a question because I grew up in a house that was built in 1876 at Fort Randall Fort in South Dakota. And it was moved to the farmstead where I grew up on by the Fink family where it was homesteaded. That particular building, and I grew up in it, and so when my parents moved in, and they did extensive remodeling on it to bring it up to standard. The main portion of the house was still the house that was at the fort. It was the sutler's house. Now they did extensive modification, added on and everything like this, put in air conditioning, etc. So this is something that, as time goes by, houses would normally change. So the exterior, how do you deal with that?
You raised several interesting questions that I'll try to address. When we're dealing with the National Register of Historic Places, and we use that as kind of a broad guideline in all of these activities, moved properties require special scrutiny because,
Okay, but it was put on a homestead.
right,
Okay.
if we were nominating it as the fort building, then we'd say, well, it's really kind of lost its integrity
Okay.
of place. And where something is built is essential to understanding its history.
Okay.
And if if we're just trying to nominate it as the Sutter's house on the fort, it has changed dramatically from there. It is no longer in that setting.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it could become an historic place on the farmstead, and the renovations that brought it to where it is today. National Register typically deals in about a 50-year timeline. If it's younger than 50 years, we don't ordinarily designate because we don't know yet if it's historic or if it's just.
Okay, I think you've answered my question. I just wanted to know about if the modernizations had any impact on it.
We would be looking at it as your family's moved building and how it connected to its new place. And there probably is a history of moving buildings off that fort and creating them as family homes instead. And we'd be looking at that combined history, and does it tell us an important story by its whole story?
Okay, and I think that you probably answered this question with Commissioner Vest, but to change the name, if you wanted to, you asked the question about changing the name from the Cooley Dodge to the Bluff Road, it makes no difference.
I'm not naming things in any prideful way. I'm simply using this
That as
the information as a way to. Its address is specific. Something that referred to it. It does not. I give it the name that I'm accustomed, that kind of emerges from the research.
Yeah, it was a reference.
I name chapters by what I think will catch the attention of a reader.
Okay.
This is like naming a chapter.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any further comments?
I have a question for Steve.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Henriksen, would you come forward, please?
Do you solemnly swear from the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Steve Hendrickson with the Planning Department.
Mr. Vest?
Yes. Good morning, Steve.
Morning.
Good to see you. There's been a lot of discussion throughout this process about commercial versus the path that's being taken here. Could you explain to us what the differences are and maybe what the ramifications of going one way or another would be?
Sure, and this perhaps more relates to the special permit part of it. And so
Maybe that.
I don't know if you want me to come back for the
Let's
special
do-
permit.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Well, okay.
All right. Any further questions? Okay. Well, we will close the hearing on the change of zone number 19018, and let's go to the correlating item 4B.
This is under old business. This is a resolution in a matter of change of zone number 19018 from AG Agricultural to AG Agricultural, a historic landmark overlay on approximately 17 acres on property generally located at 17185 Bluff Road in Lancaster County, Nebraska.
Okay. Any discussion on this?
I will move approval.
I would second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the resolution in the matter of change of zone. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we'll now open the hearing. For special permit number 19033 for an event center special permit. Okay.
Okay, why don't I go ahead and
Read
read
it,
that? This is number 6B, special permit number 19033 for an event center special permit as part of the preservation of a local historic landmark on property generally located at 17185 Bluff Road in Lancaster County, Nebraska.
Okay, and this is a continuance also of the public hearing that we opened on July 31st. Anybody as a proponent with new information?
Okay, I'll need to swear you both in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes. We're just here to reintroduce ourselves. Jed and Carol Hartwig and our family is here. We just wanted to say we're looking forward to your vote, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, and we would like the opportunity for any rebuttals at the end. And if you have any questions for us now.
Okay. Having a little bit of history with event centers, I went back and pulled the information when we went through this with a similar event center, Hillside, and looked at some of the restrictions that we put in place at that time, and have worked with Commissioner Vest and also with members of the Planning Department to outline 6 restrictions to attach to the resolution, and I know that those have been discussed with you. I apologize, you guys don't have a hard copy. We can get those for you, but you have it all on an email that was recently sent. And I'll go over those for the neighbors in the room. Number 1, no outside music is allowed to use speakers or other forms of amplification except for, oh, here's Steve, he's got them right here, except at the wedding ceremony. So use amplification for the voices speaking, but no outside music for outdoor dance parties, I guess, for lack of a better word. All portion of the events held outdoors must conclude by 10, and all events must conclude by 11, or by 12, I'm sorry, and that would specifically be additional music and particularly alcohol service. I understand that bands and alcohol service would be closing at midnight, with the understanding that there would be cleanup time following that, and that's certainly understandable. No fireworks are allowed except on July 3rd and 4th. Individuals dispensing alcohol for sale must be licensed under the Nebraska Liquor Control Act. Prior to occupancy must have appropriate occupancy permits, and that no events will be held during the weekend of the annual Camp Creek Antique Machinery and Threshing Show. I know that was a concern of the neighbors, particularly of that organization, that there's a lot of traffic and events would not be allowed to be held that weekend. So I would like to propose those, and I don't know why they're numbered 7, 8, 9, 10. They're really 1 through 6. So I think it was a reference to some previous documentation.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any comments that you would like to?
We do. We discussed things that were brought up yesterday, and our only concern with our building is the current noise that we're currently trying to figure out how to maybe buffer when we're outside on our entire 17 acres. You can hear some pretty loud interstate traffic noise. So if we do proceed with the building, we'll be working very closely with an architect on how to maybe buffer some of that noise so that it will be a quieter event for the wedding party. We had already discussed the idea of some light outdoor music just to kind of muffle the, I don't know how to explain, but the traffic noise gets kind of loud sometimes. So we thought if we had maybe like a waterfall or some just kind of like elevator music, if you will, playing outdoors at a low decibel, it would kind of buffer that loud noise that we do hear from the interstate. So we would ask for, I don't know if we can put like a volume level that we would, I mean, it wouldn't be disruptive above the sound of the interstate, but just to kind of muffle that noise a little bit, if that would be.
Yeah, and we have no intentions on having any outdoor events going on unless somebody gets married outdoors, so there's not gonna be any
Outdoor
bands outside
concerts
or concerts or anything like that. What Carol's referring to is sometimes in the city, people will have like the rock, lack of a better term, a rock speaker out there that sits by their the noise from the road and points back towards their building, so you don't hear the traffic driving by, is what we're wanting
Kind of
to
a
do, to buffer the, because when the wind blows the right direction, you really hear that traffic coming, and you can hardly hear yourself talk outside sometimes. So just something to buffer that, but nothing that's going to be like a rock concert or anything like that outside.
And I think that was my concern. I had visions of Frog Fest.
Yes, Frog Fest.
No, nothing like
Occurring
that.
with outdoor amplification and, a country band set up and lights. So I certainly think what you are proposing falls within, falls outside of the intention of the restriction.
Do you want to suggest a decibel level then? This is our favorite thing, right?
Well, and we let Scott Holmes leave the room.
He knew why he left.
That I think might be a little bit outside of this particular discussion.
I just wonder what language we would put in, because their intention, I think, is clear here.
It's
that
buffering.
They're saying no music outside, but something, and
To cover,
anybody who's been around the interstate knows what
And
they're referring to.
Right, and on advice of legal counsel, if we're going to make any changes, that this be held over for a week, and then we direct the county attorney to prepare the language to be attached to the
Right,
resolution.
yes.
So, Steve, do you think we can address that under, except for low-volume background noise during a ceremony? Something along those lines. But I think what we're working to,
I think that can, we can
exclude
discuss.
is those large, specifically outdoor concerts.
Absolutely.
The large outdoor concerts.
Not going to be
become really-
against a string quartet playing background music at a wedding, certainly.
Okay, anything further?
I also feel a restriction on the time may open a window for more conflict. We live on the property and we aren't planning on having wild parties. This is going to be a wedding venue. My concern is that opponents might be trying to police our timeline if there is a strict timeline in play. And I don't want to open a window for more conflict. I'm fine with the midnight or about, but if there are still people there, I just don't want to open. I mean, how many people might stay for cleanup? How many people are direct family members? What time? I mean, it just seems like this could be another avenue for just further conflict.
Well,
so
the intention was to cut off alcohol sales at
Right,
that time.
which
So,
maybe we could
people are
word it
traveling
so
home.
it's alcohol sales
Right.
end at a certain time. If there are people still there cleaning up, that might just kind of
Any
alleviate
indoor music would
further-
be completed at midnight, so in my mind, it would just be the sound of
Would be
normal
just-
cleanup.
yeah.
That's certainly not, intended to be excluded in this as well.
There's no expectation that at midnight everybody's off the property. It's just
Right,
that the
okay.
music stops,
But
alcohol
kind of like
serving
things
stops.
start wrapping, like wrap it up. And
You should
okay.
see cars leaving,
Right.
at midnight.
I'm understanding that some folks may choose to take down their decorations. We've done it. I had 5 children get married, so we've done it because it was easier than getting up the next morning and coming back. So I think that's the spirit
Yeah,
of
that's
what
the
we're trying
spirit
to accomplish.
Right.
Because at our own daughter's wedding, it was over at 11 o'clock, but we were there till 12 cleaning up, so.
Right, that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm saying. I just don't want to have neighbors watching and saying, complaining that everybody wasn't gone in time, or I just feel like it could open up a window for more.
If there are people there until 2 o'clock in the morning that are cleaning up, or, if it ends at midnight and there's people there till 2 cleaning up and families get together that haven't seen each other for a long time, that's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay.
But the alcohol sales and the music, the band
Right,
would have
would be
stopped at
right.
midnight, so that the event itself is over.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
I-
Oh, Commissioner Vest.
Oh,
Okay.
Go ahead,
Commissioner
Sean.
Vest.
Let Sean go first.
Okay, Flowerday, Commissioner Flowerday.
My only question was, when, does anyone know, when does my microphone was not turned on. When are the dates set for the Camp Creek Antique Machinery and Threshing Show?
Second weekend in July, third weekend in July.
It's always the third weekend in July, and that's just right.
Yeah, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
I can just imagine a conflict if, weddings sometimes might get planned 8-9 months out. If there was some fluidity in that, but so, okay, that answers my question. I don't think there will be a conflict then if you have an annual weekend that you always meet. That should make sense.
Commissioner Vest?
Two items. Just a side note, you brought some fine-looking people with you this morning. I didn't know if we wanted to take a moment to get introduced to these folks.
Yes. So this is my daughter Grace, Garrett, and Gavin. And I would have loved to have run a small agricultural business on our property, but it's not really possible. And growing up on a farm myself, I really wanted to involve my kids in our business somehow, which we already do at some level, but I'm really excited for their opportunity to help us with this business, and this is going to be a family-run business, so that's why they're here today, because they'll be involved.
Very good. Well, thank you for bringing them. I think it's a nice touch. The question that has been addressed in some of these applications, I'm not seeing anything on this one, is the number of events. Do you have a picture of what you're looking for, shooting for, as far as how many times you'll fill the building?
Well, we would like to, in order to make it financially work, we need to have as many as possible.
Like at least one per weekend is what we would hope for.
Yeah.
So.
One Friday, Saturday, Sunday, typically. Hopefully, majority of the weekends throughout the year.
So we're taking one weekend out because of Camp Creek, but there is, that leaves 51 weekends a year with some holidays thrown in there.
Yep.
So your vision is that as many as you can fill, that's what you want to do.
We're actually going to visit some more venues and see what works best for people generally. We haven't decided if we would separate Friday from Saturday as two separate or include those as one. So we haven't, I know personally for me, I enjoyed the opportunity to decorate on Friday and have my event on Saturday. From a financial and a business perspective, it would obviously be better for us if we could host 2 events per weekend. So we're trying to weigh out the options. We don't want to disrupt our neighborhood, and we don't want to upset anyone by creating more events, but we also financially have to sustain our project as well. So we're kind of just waiting to kind of see maybe what will work best for us and for people that potentially want to book. It might change over time is what we're thinking.
Sure. So if the customers are there to do an event Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon, that's what you're in business for,
Yes.
right? That's what
Yes,
you'd be
some
looking at.
people do 3 separate rentals over the weekend. We just haven't come to a firm conclusion as to if that's what we will be doing or not.
You're early in the process.
And also on top of that, if someone wants to, let's say the high school wants to host a banquet out there during the week, we want to keep it open for that, so we have that opportunity during the week to do different things like that.
Community type events that.
That was a question that I had is, would it be only on the weekends or would it also be for special events possibly during the week? And so you've answered that question. Okay, because there are some folks who would like to have a wedding on a Wednesday or a Thursday night.
Right. Or corporate retreats,
Corporate
all
retreats.
of those types.
Yep. We went and visited one a couple weeks ago, and in Fremont, and he said he had quite a few people who did corporate retreats there during the week for gatherings.
Makes sense. My last question then is related to the name, which you've heard discussed here. There sounds like a lot of people took a part in building this property and preserving it and all the things that make it what it is today. I'm referring to Mr. Arthouse here, that his grandparents were very humble people, didn't want attention called to them. is how, my wife and I do this 0 to 10 thing, so I know how serious she is. If she says something's important, she says it's a 10, I put my shoes on and I'm ready to go. And if she says it's a 4, I think we've got options. So anyway, how attached are you to the Cooley Dodge name? 4.
Yeah, if able to proceed, we plan to give the building or the venue a name that would not be Cooley Dodge. I mean, it's my understanding that we can have our own name for the venue, and the Cooley Dodge name would basically be on a registry. It wouldn't be on a sign in front of our property, is my understanding.
It really makes no difference to us
But
what
it
the
doesn't
name is.
make a difference
Okay.
what the name is. Yeah.
Well, I think that's all.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
I do have one thing that we talked about last
Oh, okay.
night, and it's about the Camp Creek weekend. Because it's, Saturday and Sunday. And majority of the traffic comes there early in the morning. And I was talking to one of the neighbors, and that is in a path that all the traffic comes in, and talking to her prior to this, that everybody leaves typically by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that is majority of the traffic that comes out there. So might be something to consider, possibly having a small event on that Saturday night.
Or even an event in
I don't think so.
conjunction with.
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
One weekend.
One
Yeah.
weekend,
Yep.
take a vacation.
Yep. Okay.
Worth a try, though.
Okay, anything?
And the
Thank you.
fireworks was just out of respect to the volunteer fire department.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you. Do I need to sign in as well?
Yeah,
I didn't do that.
So does school start tomorrow then? Is tomorrow the big day?
Yes.
I thought
2
so.
of them are tomorrow, and the other one's on Thursday.
Oh, good
I got a
luck.
lesson in county government today.
You might get extra credit.
Exactly how they wanted to spend the last day.
okay, any other proponents? All right, thank you, we'll go on to opponents.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Mary Johnson, 17705 Bluff Road. And I appreciate that you have put some teeth into the requirements for this event center. However, there are some other things that, as a member of the community, I would like to see. If you're looking at 50 events a year, that's a lot of traffic going up and down that road. I think a more reasonable one would be 25 to 30. That would be one every 2 weeks. I've looked at other event centers, and they've said people come in on a Friday to decorate for the wedding. They have the wedding Saturday. A lot of times they come back on Sunday to tear down. I don't have an issue with that. But I do have an issue when combines are going down the road and grain carts are going down the road, and you've got a whole line of cars turning in to that venue. Because there's not a turn lane there, it's going to be backed up on Bluff Road. And that's going to create some logistics issues. I've stated a lot of my concerns in the previous meetings, but if you think you should approve the venue, I commend you for putting some requirements here. The thing I have a real question about is when the Heartwings first moved into the community, there were some issues with snowmobiles going on ground that was not theirs, that they trespassed on. And I saw the push on, well, could we still do something at Camp Creek weekend? So they were pushing the envelope just a little bit there. And I have a concern about that. You know, the rule is the rule. It's just like when you run a bar. They stop serving at midnight, right? Okay, no more alcohol. Everybody starts to leave. And a lot of times a bar will set up the clock so it's 20 minutes early. So you think it's actually that time, and it's not. So, I mean, there's some things that need to be put into place, some additional things. What about security? Are they going to hire the security? Is the Lancaster County deputy going to be out there to manage traffic? And we all know, and I've seen it at weddings, at these barn weddings, there's people out in the parking lot, and guess what? They bring their own booze. And they're drinking there at their cars. And they don't stop them. They don't catch them is what happens. So they don't stop them because the booze in there is a lot cheaper than the booze that's in the barn. So that's another thing to think about. I told you about the venues. That's one venue every couple weeks. This is a farming community. It's kind of funny that people who move out the country from the city, they move out there because they want the country. But then they try to make the country just like the city that they left. And that should not be the intent here. I don't have a problem with that barn there, I really don't. But I think there needs to be additional teeth there. We farm, it's our income, it's our life and our livelihood. My husband and I own several hundred acres right there around that area that we farm. We are bought into this community, and his family's been here over 100 years. I have an issue with the number of acres that are there for the parking that they want to have. Definitely no parking on Bluff Road, and no parking going through the ditch, because that ruins the ditch and we have erosion. That's another thing that needs to be considered. I guess, we as landowners and as residents in the community, we said if this passed, we would be willing to have some compromises. But I'm not in favor of what was initially proposed. And when I first talked to Carol before the planning committee, it was 45 venues. Now, oh gee, we'd like to have one every week, maybe a couple each week, because we've got to financially make this work. Well, what about the disruption in that community? You have to consider how it's going to affect neighbors. And yes, I'm not part of the pavement. I am part of that gravel road that goes to the east. And I get a lot of traffic that comes back from Camp Creek Thrashers with their trailers, taking tractors down, and it's all hours of the night. So I ask you to reconsider the number of events that they're going to have, and it needs to be something that all the residents who live, work, and farm in the area can agree on, not just something that the Hartwig family wants to do. And that's just being good neighbors. Thank you. Any questions?
Based upon that testimony, I'd like to add a new restriction: no parking on Bluff Road at any time.
Or in the ditches.
Or in the ditches.
Let's get Pam probably has wording she'd like to use.
Because it's not a farm sale.
Okay.
Okay.
Here comes Pam.
I would just like to add.
You need to be sworn in. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. There is no parking on any county roads, and so no parking on any county roads already exists throughout the county.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm Peggy Brown, 11700 North 176th Street. I have been a member of the Camp Creek Threshers for 43 years, and I spent 4 years as secretary. That was a learning experience. I want to thank you for keeping our weekend to ourselves. But I want you to explain a little bit about the traffic. You've said a lot of the people leave early on Sunday. They did this year because we had 3 inches of rain and we were pulling them out. But we have the weekend before, you will see old equipment come down that road. They don't go fast. And we have seen cars go around trailers pulling old tractors, and they don't care what's coming or not. So really, our road, Bluff Road, is really busy the weekend before, because usually on Sunday. Friday, it's terrible. Saturday's terrible. Sunday's terrible. Yes, we do have a lot of people move out, but that night, we always have something going on. And then Monday is just as bad, because those farmers in their overalls come after those antique tractors, and they come back out. Now, next year, we will have John Deere as a feature tractor. When I was secretary, we had John Deere. We had 10,000 people at the show in 2 days. We had to shuffle them from Waverly. Will we have that this year? I don't know, because of your rodeo. You've got a huge quilt show going on in town that weekend. You've got the state games that weekend. How's this going to affect Camp Creek? We don't know. We're already telling people, rent your rooms now, because there's no rooms to rent. So I really thank you for that, because Camp Creek has put Waverly on the map, and we have done a lot for the county, we feel. So as a former secretary who will never serve as an officer again, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm Marlon Johnson. I just have a few quick comments in terms of the water supply on the place. Nobody has addressed this ever since that I've heard any of these comments. The water well is not registered with the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources. We don't know the quantity of it. We may know the test of it because in the real estate transactions, a water test is required. But how many gallons a minute will that produce? And if you have 300 people or whatever the number is, you know, how many gallons does it take to provide adequate water for that function? What's the plan for that? I did a little bit of checking with it. Rural water, the closest one is Cass County Rural Water System that's 3.5 miles away. And that is with a 2-inch pipe. No way is a 2-inch pipe going to provide the volume needed for a function like they're going to have. And then you compound that issue at potentially, let's just say 3 events over a weekend, 51 weeks a year, that's 153 events. I just don't see, I mean, you'd almost need a borderline irrigation well to provide that. I want to talk a little bit about the septic lagoon that was most likely going to be needed on the place. Are they going to put in porta potties? Are they going to do a septic lagoon? You know, who's addressed those issues? Sure, I mean, the engineers need to decide all of that, but where does this all fit in? As I did a Google on the area that they have, taking the house and the acreage out of it, trees, their 4-wheeler track, the obstacle course and what have you, before you take any setbacks away from that, that come up to be 9.35 acres. You take the setbacks off of that, you're easily less than 8 acres out of it. And I saw future plans of a pond on the place. A pond, a sewage lagoon, parking. How does all this fit in? Seems very, very tight to me. What's going to get sacrificed? Probably parking spaces, because we already know they can't park on Bluff Road. So, you know, I'm not seeing how these numbers all fit together. And nobody's really addressed them to my knowledge either with it. So I do appreciate some of the constraints that were put on this, the regulations. I personally would like to see it shut down a little bit sooner than the midnight part of it. You know, Deer Springs does 9 p.m. I would think that 11 p.m. could easily provide as much enjoyment to the events that they're having, and that would essentially make a lot of the traffic and people out of there by midnight, you know, as compared to leaving it open till midnight and essentially 1 o'clock that they would be leaving. But I just, you know, those are key issues, the water and the sewer, and I just think there's real things to be decided on that's going to limit a lot of what they're trying to do. And the number of events is just way overboard to my notion. Thank you for your consideration. I'd answer any questions.
Any questions? All right. Thank you for your input.
Do you want me to sign in again?
That'd be great.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Mary Alice Johnson. I live at 11651 North 176th Street. And Mr. Johnson just brought up a really good point. We live 3/4 of a mile. Our house is 3/4 of a mile north of them, but we farm 160 acres to the north. And our field goes to the south, which is closer to them. So he brought up the point of the water. Well, that's a big concern for us because we irrigate part of that 160 acres. So what is this going to pull on the aquifer? And how will it affect our farming operation? It's just something that I'm really concerned about and should be, I think you should take into consideration. where is our livelihood going to go if it pulls on the aquifer in our water supply? How is it going to affect Camp Creek's water supply? So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other opponents?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good morning. My name is Nancy Mocroft, and my husband's name is David Paulson, and we own 459 acres in the neighborhood around 8705 North 176th Street in Waverly. And I've given you the plat map so you can see where our property is located in case you'd like to come visit. Well, you're welcome anytime. In 1869, my great-grandmother's parents purchased land from the state of Nebraska. And much of that land has been continuously farmed since then by my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, and me. We have the original deeds and can tell you exactly who lived where and when, if you would want to know that. But while historical accuracy is important to us, that's not what I wanted to talk to you about this morning, because we've already talked about that. What I'd like to talk to you about is something that is near and dear to the county board's heart, and that is chickens. See, I know you're all very fond of chickens. Now, just bear with me, Roma.
Okay.
All right. Bear with me. Last March, a request from Bill Bevins went before the Planning Commission, and he was looking to expand his poultry operation in our neighborhood. The hearing took less than 30 minutes, and there was no one opposed. The only letter received was one from a neighbor who supported the expansion. My husband and I got that letter as well, and we were not opposed to the expansion either. Why? First of all, the Bevins family has responsibly raised poultry in our neighborhood for over 50 years. Secondly, poultry is agriculture and has a place in our rural community along with crop farming. And the Bevins family has always contributed their time and resources to making Waverly a better place to live. With the application that is currently under discussion, there are more neighborhood landowners opposed to this project than are in favor of it. There's nothing about this project as presented that will be of benefit to anyone in the neighborhood except the owners. In fact, the quality of our rural lifestyle and livelihood potentially could be damaged. We are opposed to this particular special permit because it has nothing to do with agriculture and will bring unwanted traffic to an area where the roads are already questionable. All things being equal, we'd prefer chickens. At least chickens don't drink and drive. As a local broadcaster used to say, my time is up, and I thank you for yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other opponents?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Andrew Stock, 9503 286th Street, Murdoch, Nebraska. Owner of Waynar Stock, Inc. I own the property that borders the Hartwig's property on two sides. I just want a little clarification. Commissioner Vest, you attempted earlier to address the commercial zoning, and it kind of got shut off and dropped, and nobody's brought it up since. I guess I sent a letter to you guys. I wasn't able to attend the previous meeting. I was out of town. But my question is, why, as Lancaster County, do we have to zone the entire property as ag to build a commercial building on it? Is there a reason why they couldn't split off 8 acres off their property, make them zone it commercial, build it to commercial code? Is it all or nothing? It's just a question I had that I hadn't seen addressed yet, and I just wondered if anybody could answer that. Or
I think we're going to get the answer to that shortly. But
okay.
I can't answer it.
I can't answer it either.
Otherwise, I mean, that's my main concern is, you know, like I said, I own the property next door, the septic, the water, the traffic, the trash. blowing across the field. Those are my concerns, and I just view this as a commercial project, not an agricultural related project on a farm.
Just for clarification, you don't live on that property? You
I
just
do
farm-
not. No,
okay.
it's just an ag property.
It's an ag
Correct.
property, okay.
Okay. Is it farming or is it any type of livestock?
Just farming.
Farming, okay, thank you. Okay. Steve, can you answer the question about the zoning?
We're waiting with bated breath.
I'm going to go ahead and swear you in again. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Steve Hendrickson with the Planning Department. So you previously had a change of zone, but you didn't change the underlying zoning, which is AG agricultural. All you did is approve a local landmark. That is our way of bookkeeping, you might say. We keep track of our local landmarks by following them as a change of zone, even though you're not changing the underlying zoning from AG agricultural to commercial. So this property is not being rezoned to commercial use. That would allow a vast variety of restaurants and car washes and those type of things. So instead, the zoning is remaining AG agricultural. You're approving with this action now, or being asked to approve, a special permit, and the special permit is for historic preservation. And under that historic preservation special permit, you could allow additional uses that might not otherwise be allowed in the AG district. So you can allow, for instance, an event center. You could allow an office use. You could allow other kinds of things that have, in the city particularly, we've seen that. We've had people do a bed and breakfast, kind of a motel use, you might think of, 5 or 6 rooms, not normally allowed, but you can do it as a way of preserving that historic asset. And so that's what's being requested here. Can also, if I go ahead and answer your earlier question, I'm sorry, it might have been fine to do that too. So the other venue might have been, if the house was not a local landmark, to apply for an expanded home occupation special permit. So they're both special permits, and in both the special permits, you have the ability to add additional conditions. So on this special permit for a local landmark, you can add hours of operation. You could also add hours of operation on the expanded home occupation. That was what was done with the Hillside Event Center. So there's some basic rules that go along with that, but there's some of those that can also be waived. Expanded home occupation said there should be no more than 2 people who are coming onto the site for the purposes of the home occupation who don't live there. That is a challenge for an event center, but is something that has been waived to allow an event center to have the band come on the site, or the DJ, or the 5 people who are going to serve the food and the drinks on the site for that night. All those people are considered that they're coming to the site to be a part of that occupation. It actually excludes deliveries. So if you're dropping off flowers, you wouldn't be counted. So they still could have gone the expanded home occupation route and asked for a waiver, perhaps, as to the number of people that are coming on site. But we noted this is also a very nice collection of buildings on the site. It looks like it might be the potential for a local landmark. Ed Zimmer, the historic preservation planner, investigated that, found out that it did. But of course, the historic preservation local landmark comes with a lot more strings attached in terms of review of the buildings and the exteriors and how they're used than just the expanded home occupation. On expanded home occupation, we don't get into preserving the house as it appears. You could do whatever you'd like. So there are pros and cons, but both would have been a special permit, and both would have allowed you to add conditions that are appropriate to mitigate potentially any impact of traffic or impact on adjacent neighbors.
So, question?
Okay. You have
so commercial is a whole nother designation that would have opened the doors to all kinds of options. I mean, you could have done almost unlimited activities if it was zoned commercial.
Correct. That would have been a B commercial zoning district. I don't think we would have recommended approval of that here, particularly on the entire 17 acres or 8 acres or even really 2 acres, because the comprehensive plan for the city and the county really encourages that type of more intensive commercial zoning, that should be in the communities of Lincoln and Lancaster County. So that kind of zoning should be in Waverly, in Hickman, in Lincoln, in Bennett, those incorporated communities to benefit those communities rather than having commercial zoning scattered all over the county.
Yeah, because that was a question we received. And so then the way they're doing it, they're taking a lot of responsibility on, and we'll be able to set standards that they'll adhere by
Correct.
this process.
And also a note, this special permit is specifically for the event center. So if in 10 years they sell this and somebody else comes in and doesn't want to run an event center, it'd have to go back through the process again to say, well, what is the next use proposed for this building? Is it appropriate for the site? Because it might have different use characteristics than an event center.
Okay, any further questions? Did I ask for a neutral position? Anyone in a neutral position? Okay. No further comments. We will close this public hearing and move on to 4C.
This is under,
Sorry, before you close it, I didn't know, I know the applicant mentioned they wanted rebuttal. I didn't know if they still wanted
okay.
that before you officially
Thank you
closed
for
it.
reminding me. Applicant, do you need a rebuttal? I think we've covered everything. Okay, all right, thank you. Well, again, the public hearing is closed, and let's move on then to 4C.
this is under old business, resolution in the matter of county special permit number 19033 for an event center special permit as part of the preservation of a local historic landmark on property generally located at 17185 Bluff Road in Lancaster County, Nebraska.
Before I make a motion, Steve, do you feel that the restrictions that we've discussed today are sufficient that we could be included and passed today, or would you prefer it be held a week for language revisions and review by the county attorney? I guess that's a question for both of you.
We're fine. We have two suggestions to make, if that's okay with the county attorney.
Okay. So then I guess my motion would be to direct the county attorney to prepare a resolution in approval, including the amended restrictions.
Or contingent upon. Okay.
And I would note, so what you have on the projector, and we had passed out, they were numbered 7 through 12 because there's already conditions 1 through 6.
Got it.
So
Okay.
those conditions are about changes to the site plan, some other standard conditions that we had in there as well. So they were numbered 7 through 12. And as I had understood number 7, maybe perhaps the way to be more direct on that is to say outside music concerts are not allowed. And would that get to the heart of, while it's an event center, an outside music concert is not allowed. And so strike the language that is in there that might get hard as to, yes, definitely next to the interstate, we can understand why they might want to have amplification of a little background music or those type of things, and instead get to the heart of it is no outside music concert at all. So if you get an application in the future for an SDL or something for this, we can clearly point out. That one would say outside music concerts are not allowed as a replacement for number 7. And then on number 8, the first part of the sentence would stay, any portion of an event held outdoors must conclude by 10 p.m. And the next part, as I understood it, would instead say all alcohol sales shall conclude by 12 o'clock a.m.
And music as well.
Yeah, I was going to say performances and alcohol sales.
Okay.
It's, I think, a sound issue is what we're trying
All
to
alcohol sales, music, and performances shall conclude by 12 a.m.
What about language that would include no outside alcohol may be brought onto the property for these events? Obviously, if the owners are having friends over, that's a different situation. We're talking about the event center now. No outside alcohol may be brought on or consumed outside the building. Can we add language like that?
That is something I would want to look into a little bit further. I don't know if we've ever done that before, not saying that we can't. But before we put language in there, I'd want to make sure that it meets with any other standards that we have regarding, liquor licenses and anything of that sort that would ever come under this realm.
And we wouldn't want to prohibit a family from bringing the alcohol for the event, because that is clearly bringing in outside alcohol. So,
yeah, it really just goes, I've been married once,
that would
but
be the
there are
challenge
different,
is
yeah.
somebody's having a family reunion on the side on a Thursday evening, and they wish to have wine at their event, and they're not selling it for consumption on site.
Yeah.
Typically, that's something that's not covered and is permitted.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a different scenario. We have the language we have, any individual entity dispensing alcohol for sale for consumption on the premise must be licensed under the Nebraska. So that's when they're selling it.
Correct.
either
So
to the
your
people
typical
doing-
wedding reception where they're
Right.
selling the drinks, that would need to have the type of licenses that are appropriate for that type of an event.
Right.
So
And I
you
think
couldn't
that's
have
the
a.
events I'm referring to. Is that no outside alcohol, maybe, no additional alcohol. Maybe I'm overthinking this.
Not that you're overthinking it, but with this, this just makes sure, even if it is from an outside, that person bringing it in and selling it is also licensed and covered. It'll catch it.
Okay.
That is to catch up.
So that's a different event than a family gathering saying, we like, Heineken and we want to bring coolers in with us. That's a different scenario. It was just brought up during the conversation that people would be bringing their own alcohol. I don't know if we can put language in that makes it clear that the expectation is that won't happen. Obviously, enforcement's more complicated, but that's what I'm driving.
I was just going to say, presumably the business itself is going to have policies of no outside
Yes,
alcohol
but-
because they want to encourage, at the very least, their own internal alcohol.
That makes sense, yeah.
I think that really is an issue for the owners.
Okay.
Because at other venues that I do know of, there's very strict, there are restrictions upon the alcohol, the amount consumed, drunkenness, et cetera. That's almost a security issue. That would be up to the owners to enforce.
I withdraw the language.
Okay.
So number 8 again would say, any portion of an event held outdoors must conclude by 10 p.m. All alcohol sales, music, and performances shall conclude by 12 o'clock a.m.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay?
So I guess I'll maybe restate the motion to direct the county attorney to prepare a resolution for approval, including these additional 6 restrictions.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Please call the roll.
Vest,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0. Next is number 7, public comment. Those wishing to speak on items relating to county business not on agenda may do so at this time.
Anyone desiring to speak on issues not related to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for adjournment.
Well, let's do announcements first.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Rushing forward.
The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners will hold a staff meeting on Thursday, August 15th, 2019 at 8:30 a.m. in the Bell Luxford Studio of the County City Building. The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners will hold its next regular meeting on Tuesday, August 20th, 2019 at 9 a.m. in Room 112 of the County City Building with the Board of Equalization immediately following. The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, August 20th, 2019 at 9 a.m. in Room 112 of the County City Building regarding the vacation of West Saltillo Road in the southeast quarter of Section 34, Township 9 North, Range 5 East of the 6th Principal Meridian, and in the northwest quarter of Section 2, and the northeast quarter of Section 3, Township 8 North, Range 5 East of the 6th Principal Meridian in Lancaster County, Nebraska. The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, August 27th, 2019 at 9 a.m. in Room 112 of the County City Building regarding Keno Fund projects and Lancaster County's proposed budget for fiscal year 2019-2020. County Commissioners can be reached at 402-441-7447 or commish@lancaster.ne.gov. The Lancaster County Board of Commissioners meeting is broadcast live on Link TV City. For the rebroadcast schedule, visit lincoln.ne.gov. Meetings are also streamed live on Link TV and can be viewed on YouTube.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Shore,
Yes.
Flowerday,
Yes.
Yocum,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Amundson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.